Hi, and welcome to the Research Room, a space to make research by the people for the people.
Perfect synergy.
And today we have another episode of Falsifiable Fridays. And I'm going to be switching the topic quite a bit from last month. I'm going to be talking about memory, and there's a lot to talk about with memory. Like, again, there's just no way I'm going to be able to fit everything within this next month, but I am going to try to do something. And I think even with just today, um, there's so much of memory, and I don't know, like I've never heard anyone say this, but like this is my thought that I think a lot of what we think of memory, it's like the tip of the iceberg. Like there's just so much that happens. There's so much that like we consider to be I guess I want to say this the other way. There's so much that we don't consider to be memory that is actually memory. There's so much that is some stuff that we don't consider memory that is memory. What do I mean by that? So, I mean, maybe even when we think about memory, maybe we think that there is just memory, right? It's just the one concept, which is kind of true, I guess. Maybe you can think of memory in a few different ways. Maybe you um, partition it into different kinds of memory. Maybe it's memory that is like more immediate, and then other memory that is more long term. There's so much more than that. I would say there's definitely more than this number that I'm about to say, but I would say that there are 12 at least different types of memory. I will kind of go through most of them today. I won't spend too much time on all of them, but just so that you get a sense of like what is out there. I wanted to go through this and like hopefully put this into like perspective. Memory is a very complex process. It's not just there. There's reasons why it's there, and there's steps for why it's there. So, one, I'm going to be very curious about like how many of these do you already know? Do you even consider these memory? I would say yes, they have to be at least some part of memory. Um, hopefully that'll make sense in just a little bit. So I think that there are three main types when it comes to memory. There is sensory memory, there's short-term memory, there's long-term memory. Within all of that, there are multiple other types of memory. So even just with sensory memory, um, there's three main things that happen here. So uh, I will say these three terms, and I wonder what you will think of these. There is iconic memory, there's echoic memory, and there's haptic memory. What does that mean, right? What are those three? So if I say something like iconic memory, and this is again within just sensory. So sensory is all the stuff that is like very quickly happening. It very rarely makes it out of this sensory kind of stage. And you can think of all memory as like from sensory, it goes to short term, from short term to long term. And then there's back and forth between short term and long term. But when it comes to sensory stuff, this is literally just everything, everything that you can take in at any given point in time. And it's in your memory, at least for a little bit. And it has to be in memory for it to make it to these other two stages. But the idea of iconic memory, if you are, let's say, looking at your laptop or your phone or wherever you are watching this or listening to this, you will maybe be taking in me. I mean, I guess that is optimistically speaking that like you are paying attention and you're actually like looking and like all of your 100% of your attention is actually devoted here, but like probably not happening, right? But either way, whatever you're looking at right now, potentially it's me, maybe it's your screen, maybe it's your phone, maybe it's your laptop, maybe it's the broader surroundings around you, right? So like in front of me, I can also see like my light. I can see one of my dog's toys. I can see my microphone, I can see my phone. There's so many other things that are happening, and these are all part of our iconic memory. And like I said, most of those aren't things that we're going to remember. Some of them might stick out. Some of them we might carry over into short-term memory so that we can like work with them. But for the most part, they're there, they're gone. You're not going to remember every single slice of every single moment, unless you're like a very, very select, like few people, right? So iconic memory, that's everything that you're seeing. Echoic memory, that is everything that you are hearing. So as you're listening to my voice, and maybe you're listening to other things, maybe there's other sounds that are happening around you. Again, you won't necessarily remember all these things. Maybe there's some things that stick out to you that you do end up remembering. But for the most part, we don't remember every single thing. And we certainly don't remember every single thing like in all of the ordering that it has happened, right? Um, you might remember that you heard a sound earlier today. Maybe you heard a sound last week. You won't necessarily remember all the things that happened before that, all the things that happened after that. You might remember that one moment of sound. Hopefully you do remember a lot of what you're hearing though, especially if my voice is one of the like main sounds that you're hearing right now. And then there's haptic memory. So haptic memory is going to be all the things that we can feel. So maybe you are sitting in a chair right now. Maybe you're sitting on your bed. Maybe you're sitting somewhere else. You can feel all those sensations against you. Maybe all the like the clothing that you're wearing, right? There's all of those sensations as well. Maybe you have your phone in your hand. Maybe there's that. That's going to be part of your memory, or your haptic memory at least. And each of these three are three different like streams of things, right? You can potentially remember a lot of things that you see, and you don't necessarily remember a lot of things that you hear. Maybe it's vice versa. Maybe you are very, very like physically oriented, and like you remember all these other like sensations, but you don't necessarily remember what was actually happening, what were you seeing, what were you listening to. Um, so all of these are literally just to say like this is everything that you are taking in at any given moment. That's going to be your sensory memory. So this happens, I mean, in a second or so, it's gone, right? And it's piling up over and over and over again, right? Like there's so many seconds in a day. You are only going to remember so much of that like huge amount of like data that we're getting all the time. Okay, so then short-term memory. So short-term memory is going to be the next step. It's right after you are experiencing all these things, some things make it through, and they will be in our heads for like maybe 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. We can of course extend the amount of time that's in our head if we are like consciously thinking about it and like working through it and like things like that. But for the most part, things will be there for a little bit. You can engage with it for a little bit, and it's going to go away. And then a select few of those things will make it to long-term memory. So the short-term memory, you might think of this as like, I mean, you can hold like 5 to 9-ish pieces of information, whatever those pieces of information are. So that could be voice things, that can be visual things, that can be other things, right? Abstract ideas. So whatever it is, you have a limited capacity, but like not too bad. And like that capacity, like maybe it's one thing that you are really remembering, but that actually has like 10 different like pieces to it. Like you can like chunk things together and like try to remember things like that, right? So this is in your head for a little bit, and there are probably at least like 4 different types of memory when it also comes to this. So it's not just short-term memory, but there's all these other levels to it. So with this, there's going to be, maybe I'll start with this one. I'll start with this thing called the visual spatial sketchpad. Visual spatial sketchpad. And it's weird because like I never have to say that. I've only been saying it in my head, so saying it out loud is a little weird. But what is that, right? So I mean, you can kind of like think of what this is, right? Visual, which is just like the way that you might tack on the word visual in the beginning of a word. Spatial, things to do with like space, like the dimensionality of things, right? Like distance and things like that, right? So all of those things, and they have a nice little term, sketchpad. So like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that like visual things would go onto a sketchpad, and like in your head, it kind of is working like that. Your brain is like constructing all these like little components and everything, and like putting them all together. Um, Actually, like another cool thing is like, I mean, you can like very much trace this within your own like head and like within your own brain, like not completely, of course, but like I mean, if you are watching this and you can actually see me, you can take in information, right? This is all going to be um, the iconic information, and with like a little bit of other like stuff added in when it comes to like the spatial stuff. But this is very much the iconic sensory memory that has now been transferred into your short-term memory. That's all through your eyes, of course. And so your right eye, you could follow the track basically from what you're taking in, and that's going to go all the way to the back, to the back of your head, um, to the last little bit here, and that's your occipital cortex. That's going to be going all the way, occipital lobe more generally. That's going to come all the way back there. And same with your left eye, that's going to come all the way around to the right side. And so from there, it's going to go a couple different directions. It might go up or it might come down. Some of the information that goes up, if someone ever were to say that it's going dorsally, that means, I mean, in this case, it is going up into the like crown of your head, or it can go ventrally, and that means it's coming like down and around. In this case, when it comes to your brain. So it's going to go in these two different directions, and those two different directions, your brain's going to be doing different things. Different parts of what you're taking in is going to go to different places. And that's part of like this memory formation kind of thing, right? It's now in different parts of your brain. It's making sense of it, and things that matter are going to stick longer than things that don't matter, generally speaking. Sometimes it's like, why do I remember this? Why is this in my head right now? But so we have that. And so it's going to go up and around. It's going to end up in a lot of like this kind of region, the real top of your head, this the parietal lobe. And that is going to, it's going to go to like things of like physical, like sort of things within your body. That's like movement sort of things, like you need to be able to see in order to like have this kind of movement, right? That's how you understand where to move, how to move. It's because it's all the like the visual things that you're taking in, it's all the spatial kind of things that you're taking in as well. So that's the visual spatial sketchpad. I guess I'll also say it mostly goes to the right side of your brain. And that's maybe why some people think that like, oh, if you are this kind of person, then you are more right brain than left brain. All of that is like false, but like I guess it has some truth and merit to it, because things typically are like localized to some part of your brain. But in reality, it does like it's not only the right side of your brain, it's not only the left side of the brain, with like very, very few exceptions. And you can always like learn that like some things that are meant to go to the right side of your brain, for some people they go to the left side. Brains can work in a lot of different ways, but yeah, for the most part it is on the right side. And then when it comes to like more like word kind of things, that's more likely to go to your left side, because there is actually like a very specific part of your brain in most brains that is going to be only on the left side. And so that's going to be there to like be able to figure out, what do these words mean? How do I make meaning out of this? How do I construct a response? And like, how do I know, like vocalize like what I'm trying to think? So that is all stuff that goes into the phonological buffer. That's what this part of short memory is called. So that's going to come more or less like around here, to like the side of your head, and then it might come up a little bit up here, but like mostly it's like these kinds of regions, and it comes all the way to the front because the frontal lobe, that's much more for like this like high level abstract sort of like thinking. Words are very abstract. It's they're all thoughts and ideas, right? So for it to now come closer to the front side of the brain, that makes sense as well, because like you're doing some really high level like complex thinking when it comes to talking and like reading and like explaining words and like things like that, right? So again, all of this is happening within just a few seconds of you taking in information. Some things are coming up to the right and to the top for like movement purposes. Some of them are coming to the left and like up around to the front for like word kind of purposes. Then there's also the central executive, and then this whole idea of like working memory. And so all of, I guess not all of it necessarily, but a lot of it is probably happening in the front part of your head, again, because like you're trying to make sense of everything that's happening. You're trying to make sense of all the information that's coming in and what's important, what's not important, trying to combine pieces of information to like make new information in your head. That's likely going to be happening for the most part in the front part of your brain. So that's, I mean, that's kind of that. So like as you're listening to me, the things that you're seeing, as long as your brain is like working through this information, it's going to come all the way to the back of your occipital lobe. The things that I'm doing with my hands and like with my face and as I'm talking and things like that, that's probably going more to the parietal region, that like top sort of region. The things that I'm saying, though, that's being processed in a whole different way, and that's coming to the like left side of your head, and to that side, and like kind of more to the front. Cool stuff, I think. Okay, so then I'll leave that there as far as what is happening with short-term memory. Of course, it's more complex. Of course, there's more to say there. The last thing I'm going to say is stuff on long-term memory. So there, when it comes to long-term memory, I think this is like really when we are thinking of memory, this is what we're thinking of. We're thinking of long-term memory. We're thinking of the things that we can like try to remember from the past and bring them to like consciousness and to awareness. Even that's like only maybe about half the story of long-term memory. There's so much more when it comes to long-term memory. So there's two different like big things within long-term memory. One is going to be declarative memory, one is going to be non-declarative memory. Declarative memory means that we can declare it, right? We can say it. We are conscious and aware of it. Non-declarative, it's not to say that it's completely something that we're not aware of, but the actual like actions and things that we do, the reactions potentially as well, that's all going to be within our long-term non-declarative memory. And so hopefully this is going to make a little bit more sense once I actually like say, because there's so many other things, like at least 6 other things when it comes to this. So when it comes to the declarative memory, there's episodic memory, there's semantic memory. Episodic memory, exactly what it kind of sounds like. It's all these episodes within your lives. It's all the unique experiences that you're having that you can now tell other people. This happened before, I'm telling you now, and I have pulled it from memory. Cool. There's semantic memory, which is aside from just the experience itself, right? There's so many other things that we learn and we remember. Maybe you remember a time where you learned something, but you don't necessarily always have to remember that time when you're thinking of the actual idea that you learned. This is going to be much more the semantic memory part. It's these, again, these high level like ideas, usually in the form of thoughts that are in the form of words. But the idea itself, the lesson or like the experience or whatever else you're trying to convey, that's semantic memory. And of course, you can see how these two things are very much, they might have a lot of overlap, but they are two separate streams of things that are happening. You can lose a lot of that ability to like actually actively say things, to understand what ideas are, and still have ideas on like who you are, right? And the experiences that you've had. I ate something earlier today. What does that mean? I don't know, but I know that I ate something today. And you can see how these two things, like, again, they work together quite a bit, but they are two separate things. And so, um, I mean, if you do ever experience something like this, where like you just kind of start losing grasp on like what do things mean exactly, um, if you're not able to read things and like comprehend them, which I mean we all have those experiences, right? But if that is a pervasive thing, that's something that would be probably like semantic dementia, which it's very specifically working on this part of your long-term memory. There's different types of dementia. It's not just one thing. Yeah, so I mean that's an idea that I'll just kind of like float out there so that you are more aware. But okay, so then there's other ideas here that are non-declarative, right? So these are the other things that are just kind of happening and that, like, not necessarily conscious of. So this is going to be um, oh, actually no, I probably should have done this. That again, when it comes to this episodic semantic declarative kind of memory, putting it in this context at least, episodic would mean like you can remember this time that you saw me. You were watching this video, you're listening to this podcast. That's going to be the episodic memory. The semantic memory might be the other things that you learned from here, though. Maybe you have the semantic memory of the concept of memory. That is such a I did not mean to go this meta when it came to this, but I mean that is the case here, right? It's the memory of the concept of memory that you can now tell other people about. Cool. um other things that are definitely less related to what's actually happening here, but like potentially really could be. And it's very important for us to like realize that these other things are happening, these non-declarative aspects of our long-term memory. So there are, of course, like the skills and habits and things like that. Those are probably all things that, like, yes, you could say them out loud if you needed to, but for the most part, they just kind of happen. You turning on your computer, you going to your phone, you knowing how to navigate to watch this podcast, like all those things are happening. You don't have to consciously think through all that. Really cool stuff. At some point, you probably did have to, right? Before it became a habit, before it became a skill that you actually know, you had to consciously think through it and like maybe talk through the steps. At this point, probably not. Um, there's also this idea of habituation. So that is the more and more that we see something, the more and more we experience something, the less and less that we actually have a response to it, a reaction to it. We habituate to whatever's happening around us. So maybe at some point in listening to this, you have a bit habituated to my voice. And so you don't necessarily, you don't know that you're doing it, right? You could always go back and like say like, oh, like this is something that happened. But as it's happening, you're probably not like very conscious of it. And you're losing my voice. You're losing the things that I'm saying because you've kind of gotten used to my voice. If I change it up, that's going to get your attention again. You might start seeing things again, and you're not going to habituate. But yeah, that's one way in which this could happen. This is all memory that you have, though. Yeah, your brain is keeping tabs on all of it, whether or not you can actually say that. And then there's the opposite, which is going to be sensitization. And that is when, as you continually see something or hear something or whatever, your reaction gets stronger and stronger and stronger. You can think of something that you were scared of. Maybe I'm saying something that you were scared of. I don't know what I could have said, but like potentially, right? And as I'm saying those things, you're just having a stronger and stronger reaction to whatever I'm saying. So as much as I think it might be funny that like maybe there is something that I've said that could have that like response. It's not very funny a lot of the time, right? There's a lot of things that happen in life that unfortunately are very like traumatizing, triggering. That as they continue happening, you're just going to have a stronger and stronger response unless you consciously do something about that. There's also the potential thing of like priming, which would mean that like below any actual like real consciousness and awareness on your own part, I could have triggered some other thoughts on your end. So we are always making like maps of things in our head. We have these schema. If I say the word cold, there are certain things that come to mind, and that might be slightly different depending on the person, but like there's a lot of commonalities, of course. Maybe the idea of cold might also go with the word like slow, and like maybe as I keep saying word like cold, you might slow down like your movements unconsciously. That's the whole idea of like priming, that like I've primed these other thoughts and behaviors from something else that happened, that's something else that your body and your mind remember. If I talk about food and then all of a sudden at the end of this, you're wanting to like grab something to eat. And I mean, I've primed to that idea. And this happens a lot, right? Um, it's unfortunately controls us quite a bit, especially if you're not being conscious and aware of it. So that that's my very quick and basic rundown of memory. There's going to be a lot more to talk about here. There's so much more to talk about, but I wanted to talk about these general concepts because they're going to be coming up throughout the rest of this. And so, yeah, always feel free to come back to this if you want to hear about a very brief breakdown of what any of these different types are, and hopefully it also helped to like put them into context a little bit more. But okay, that's gonna be it for today. Um, we'll continue on memory and like things of like how to improve it, what ends up not improving it, things like that, throughout the rest of this month. So until then, thank you for your time and bye for now.
With the sun will breathe.